The worst thing about prison was the Dementors. They were flying all over the place and they were scary, and then they'd come down and they'd suck the soul out of your body, and it hurt!
Hi everyone, welcome to Priority Holder, and today we'll be playing Blue-White Prison Control in the Timeless format. Now, one of our prison elements is Chalice of the Void. I love this card. You can lock opponents out that rely on like 1 mana spells, and really constrains like what people can do. The other part of that is High Noon. This can lock, this locks each player down to 1 spell each turn. You can crack it to deal 5. So basically, between these two, we can really limit our opponent's options to allow our control package to take over. So stuff like Reprieve, Mana Drain, Spell Queller, and Subtlety all answer stuff on the stack, which becomes a lot easier to do if opponent's locked under High Noon. You can only cast 1 spell each turn. And so we are able to get a lot more value out of High Noon since we can play stuff on our turn and their turns. Not to mention we also have Teferi as like an honorary lock piece, because with High Noon and Teferi Time Raveler in play, the opponent can only cast 1 spell on each of their turns, and we're completely safe on our turns. So, not to mention it also amplifies Spell Queller's power, because if they pop a Spell Queller with the Teferi Time Raveler in play, they can't cast their exiled spell because it'll not be at sorcery speeds, and Spell Queller's ability will still be on the stack. We also run Supreme Verdicts in case things get out of hand. We can clean up and then lock things down later. And Solitudes are an important way, together with Subtlety, to help us interact in the early game. And Big Teferi helps us grind out the longer game. So let's lock some people up. This hand, always happy to have an opening hand with Chalice, and Subtlety should help us in case something really goes horrible. But we'll have to see how strong Chalice ends up being in this matchup. Alright, red-white Surveil land. Surveilling Flage away. So it could be a more controlling or mid-rangey deck, but it is pretty indicative of energy. Though usually they have like Gigantha or Lurrus. So I'm gonna keep High Noon because we'll be able to set up like a pretty strong lock with Chalice and High Noon out. So very happy to Chalice for 1. Like I said, still remains to be seen how strong it is right now. Alright, fetch land from the opponent. Let's see if just another red-white land. Yeah, so another red-white land, Amped Raptor. So we know Chalice is doing some work right now. There's probably some stranded Ocelot Prides, and so the question right now is, do we Subtlety the Amped Raptors? You could see me like hesitating, and it just seems really important to keep Subtlety as like an actual threat. And Amped Raptor can spin into a 1 mana thing, which just gets bricked by Chalice. This is probably the nightmare scenario though, that it spins into an Ajani, and so all of a sudden they have a lot of power toughness and very threatening things out. So now the question is, do we slam High Noon or do we hold up Reprieve to try and just keep some of the heat off us? Because pretty soon Subtlety can bear a lot of the brunt of what they can do. Another Amped Raptor seems like a perfect thing just to Reprieve and just make them, just time walk them basically. Alright, so opponent's going to crash in for 5 damage. But like I said, next turn we have Subtlety up. And if they try and pre-combat the Amped Raptor, we'll have Subtlety back as a blocker. So feeling decent about that. Nice thing about Chalice on 1, it locks out all their static prisons. So we don't have to worry about that, or swords, or galvanic discharge. There's a lot of things we don't have to worry about now. So here comes Amped Raptor. Thankfully pre-combat, that way we can just Subtlety it and have a beefy blocker. So gonna Subtlety the Amped Raptor, and I'm very curious to see if they top it or not, because they appear to be missing lands. But Amped Raptor can just dig them into more action, so I could see why they'd want to keep it. Now I decide to High Noon here, even though it's like pretty tempting to hold up Subtlety again, but High Noon shuts down Amped Raptor's potency anyway. And just going to keep Subtlety back on. We're sort of at a low life table, so like life total. If they cast Amped Raptor, they can generate some energy, but they can't like do their little cascade thing. Not to mention, all their 1 mana spells are bricks anyway. So High Noon is shutting down like any sort of cascade shenanigans. This is a good attack from the opponent because if we block, they get the Ajani Planeswalker, which can then just cut down Subtlety anyway. Spell Queller is really nice. And this is how you lock these things up. So Chalice is shutting down like just a whole swath of their spells. And High Noon limits them to 1 spell a turn. So if we can just handle their 1 spell a turn with our like Spell Quellers and Subtleties, then they're in like pretty tough shape. So the opponent's going for a bigger attack this time. And I'm just making sure I understand the Ajani Planeswalker side. So I like this boldness from the opponent because, you know, we're only at 11, and like if they can just chump attack enough times, like if they have like more just amped raptors and stuff, like they can probably get there, especially considering like how we have to find an answer for that cat token at some point, because we can't just let it keep attacking us forever. So I like the boldness from them here. This is a good attack. So take the first strike damage, regular damage. I'm waiting for their follow-up to see what they have. Now this is real rough. This is an Ajani. At least it would be, except we have another Subtlety. So we're gonna deal with that for now. And they're going to top that because flipping into a Ajani Planeswalker is just super, super strong right here. But our life total is falling, and it's just a tough situation right now. But we do have to kill them at some point, so I am sending in 1 Subtlety to chip them down to 14. I'm trying to think about, like, if we need to hold up enough mana to crack a High Noon. But decide, you know, we'll use our 1 spell on our turn to play a second High Noon. Because together that's 10 points of burn that they represent. So. Alright, so now the opponent's just back to attacking with the cat. Which we're perfectly fine with. Like I said, we will need to figure out some way to deal with that. But right now, we can take a little bit more damage. So opponent slams the Ajani. Definitely going to just Spell Queller that. Spell Queller is, unless they're running something unorthodox, like if they draw a land and hard cast a Plage, then Spell Queller, it could be pretty tough. But a lot of their removal is 1 mana, so Spell Queller seems pretty safe right now. Checking Graveyard in case we want a Mystic Sanctuary, and grab the Reprieve. Decide. And also looking at what else we could potentially surveil into if we were to grab the surveil land. So thinking carefully and decide, you know, I'm just going to get the Meticulous Archive. Teferi Hero Dominaria seems really nice right now. And that is in fact a clean answer to the cat token. So I'm just going to play Teferi and use its -3 to get rid of the 2/1 cat, because if they reshuffle that, it's just a token, it just disappears. So, and interestingly enough, even though I have the Teferi avatar, this is like my first time like showcasing big Teferi in a video. So we're doing it. Blue-eye control. So the opponent has another Ajani. So despite all my efforts of trying to stop Ajani, they find one and flip it into a Planeswalker anyway. And thank goodness I left 1 blocker back, because otherwise we'd just be dead between an Amped Raptor attack plus an Ajani plus. So the opponent is still in a bind though with like all the creatures we have out. So they're going to 0 Ajani and kill our untapped Subtlety. So now they have a clear Amped Raptor attack. So they're going to send in, so they're cutting down Teferi, but he did his job already. He made them waste a ton of resources just to flip an Ajani. But we actually have lethal right now. Don't forget the High Noons can be cracked for 5 damage, and we have 4 in the air. So just going to crack one of our High Noons, deal 5 to their face, and simply attack in for the other 5 damage, and the opponent's dead. So if you like locking up energy, please summon him, answer the like button, and we're on to the next game already. So that feels pretty good. And I've mentioned before, like I play a lot of decks that are just sort of very optimistic, we'll put it that way, and that will lose to stuff like energy. And so I always relish when I have decks that can beat up on energy. Let's see if we can do it again though. Here's turn 1 Guide of Souls from the opponent. Drawing Chalice is incredible. That's one of the strongest weapons against energy because Chalicing for one, shuts down Ocelot Pride, Guide of Souls, Static Prison, Galvanic Discharge, like a lot of their most potent stuff. Now here's Amped Raptor. So once again, we're hoping they spin into a 1 mana spell and just brick it with Chalice. So they have a lot of good hits though. Alright, so that was a 1 mana spell, so Chalice saved us right there. Now we do have Solitude up right now, so I spend some time considering like whether it's worth Solituding that, but the good play is to just let the Guide of Souls pick up the counters right now, because if we shock in our land and Teferi bounce the Guide of Souls, then it's just going to get locked out by Chalice. So what I'm instead going to do here is pitch cast Solitude. High Noon would be nice, but it's the least valuable card now. So pitch cast Solitude to get rid of Amped Raptor. That way Teferi is unchecked once it's on the battlefield. So we take a big hit from Guide of Souls, but now if we Teferi bounce it, the Guide of Souls is basically as good as gone forever.
Trust me. You'll thank me later.
And these are the kind of things you need to, like this same thing will come up with like Necrogoyf and stuff. Like if you get a Chalice for one, you want to bounce the Necrogoyf. Okay, so opponent, it happened to have a Lightning Helix, so Teferi bites the dust. But we're pretty decently happy about that. Witch Enchanter. I'm not running a lot of MDFCs in here, but that is one of them. So we do, in order to have Subtlety up, we have to bolt that in. A Johnny, going to definitely hard cast Subtlety and let them choose whether they want it back on top or not. We keep it on top. And Subtlety is not one of the pitch elementals I play the most, but it's just so potent when it hits. It's like a brutal like time walk. I mean, like if you've played against Memory Lapse in like the early days of Timeless, like you already know that it's super strong. So we're just creating like a Groundhog Day scenario from the opponent, just making them recast the same Ajani over and over. Just gonna keep holding up our bounce spells. Like this, the Subtlety could go all the way. Really nice that we have a Solitude as like just insurance. All right, here comes Ajani again. We're trying to draw into another land just to cover ourselves. All right, another Solitude is not bad. All right, and their 1 mana spells are locked out, so they passed us. Mystic Sanctuary, however, we do not have enough islands for it to come into play untapped, so that is sort of annoying. And yeah, so we're definitely going to play it anyway. This is not the strongest Mystic Sanctuary deck because we have a ton of white spells, so like we're not as island dense. Gonna just slam Teferi though and just uptick it, and basically just have it at the ready. So like Ajani, is going to resolve right now, or like if they try and cast Ajani, then we have like we can just bounce the token, so like it's just tough for them, right? So they're changing plans. They're using an Amped Raptor instead. Once again, we're hoping they spin into something 1 mana, and it's an Ocelot Pride, so it's a brick. I love Chalice of the Void. It is incredible. You may be noticing I play a lot of different Chalice decks. I think it's underplayed in Timeless. For some reason I'm like the only person I find playing it. So anyway, it's doing some good work for us here. So now we're rolling though, because we have Solitude up. I'm gonna probably mix up Subtlety and Solitude throughout the course of this video, so please forgive me. Alright, Ajani comes down. Thank goodness they didn't spin into like a Goblin Bombardment off Amped Raptor earlier, otherwise we might be in some trouble right now. Actually, we could have responded with Solitude with the token generation on the stack. So, all right, now this is going to buffer their life total a little bit, but it's worth it because we're getting such big advantage. So, going to get rid of the Amped Raptor because the first strike is a little annoying, and going to crack the fetch on their end step. Grab one of our Surveil lands, just set up our next draw. Supreme Verdict. We're ahead on board. We don't want it right now. It is nice that you can use it to pitch cast either of our elementals in this deck. So I'm just going to use Teferi Bounce to take care of the token.
Might be a bad idea.
Mana Drain is incredible. Like that basically just sort of secures our position right now. I'm going to get rid of that extra land and Yeah, crashing for 6 damage. Now the opponent might have another cat they try and play, but you know, we got things covered. Between Mana Drain and Solitude, like, there's not really anything they can do. One ring, yeah, Mana Drain that. No sense in letting them try and dig their way out of this, so... And yeah, the opponent packs it in, so... Excellent double wins against energy, so move on to the next game. This hand... Like, I'm really reluctant to mulligan hands, being like a primarily a drafter, but this doesn't seem like it does enough in the early game. We don't even have the guaranteed 3rd land drop to know we're like getting Teferi Time Raveler on time. So I think a long time and decide, you know, like, I mean, I guess Solitude is early interaction, but it's very costly. So I was wanting to see maybe like some mana drains or reprieves. This hand looks a lot better. The question is what to put back, and it seems like a spare Subtlety, but feels a lot safer having the Supreme Verdict in hand, like in case things start going really poorly. So waiting to see what the opponent does. Turn 1 fetch, pass to us. Gonna definitely try and surveil some lands onto the top. So gonna grab a Meticulous Archive and see what we got going. Now, Witch Enchanter, like I said, I only have 2 MDFCs in the deck. I decide, you know, like, it's a painful land, but decide, you know what, like, it is a land though. We're not the like highest land count control deck ever. Like, we're only running 24 if you count the MDFCs. So I'm like, you know, I'm not going to gamble. I'm just going to keep that land, even though it's painful. We just got to hit our land drops. So I'm going to slam High Noon right here and see what the opponent says about it. They might be going, what the heck? So, alright. Opponent's going to crack their fetch. And blue-black surveil land. All of a sudden I'm like, oh no, is this show and tell? At least High Noon is like pretty strong against them. Like, usually they have to chain off some number of spells to win via Omniscience. So at least it slows them down if it is show and tell. So let's see what the opponent does. Lorien revealed. So at this point, I was like firmly convinced that it was show and tell. Sometimes, you know, there's different color variations, but the fact that it's been like mono surveil lands, Lorien revealed, you know, I'm like, okay, this is for sure show and tell. So I'm like, all right, I got Witch Enchanter in hand. I probably should keep that in hand in case they play a show and tell. We can blow up an Omniscience potentially. So thankfully we drew a 4th land and can hold up Subtlety without getting rid of our Witch Enchanter. So that was my mindset right now. But then the opponent plays Orcish Bowmasters on our end step. I'm like, okay, maybe this isn't show and tell, because that's not a card that you see them play that often. Like, it's not, you know, it wouldn't be out of the question, but you just rarely see them play that. They don't care to interact in that way. So it is going to make us have our shields down for their turn, but it seemed like just too strong not to get rid of the Bowmasters. And we draw some number of cards off Reprieve and Little Teferi, you know, so Bowmasters can be problematic. So this, after seeing that, now I'm like, okay, maybe it's not show and tell. And there's the Teferi Time Raveler. Just plussing, because I guess they could bounce the High Noon, but maybe they're just trying to buffer their life total right here, because it seemed like they missed a land drop right there. So we're going to attack. So Teferi is actually, Little Teferi is really, really strong against us, considering our whole game plan is to like interact on their opponent's turn, you know, with like Spell Quellers and Subtleties and stuff. So we very much want it dead, because we can't do anything right now. So we're hoping that our Subtlety sticks around so we can kill Teferi. Stoneforge Mystic. Okay, so it's clear we're playing some sort of mid-range deck right now. Now so I've tinkered with some Stoneforge decks. I haven't like really crystallized a list that I like. We just don't have that many good equipment in Timeless. Like, but they grabbed Assimilation Aegis, which basically is like a banishing light when it enters the battlefield, and when you equip it to something, it like clones, you know, whatever you banished. So they're grabbing some removal with the Stoneforge, and that seems to be more the way you like can build Stoneforge right now in Timeless, is sort of like value-y. kind of stuff. Nothing as potent as Batterskull at the moment. So need to get a red source so that we have High Noon active. So the reason I'm hesitating here is because I'm deciding whether to crack the High Noon to kill Teferi, because they could. There's ways that Teferi can survive, and like I said, it's really, really bad for our central game plan. So I decide it's worth it to crack the High Noon. The opponent didn't even seem that concerned about it anyway, but just didn't want like Subtlety to like eat like a Swords to Plowshares or something. Then Teferi sticks around, and then the game goes. So we draw a High Noon anyway, so we're feeling pretty good. Maybe we could have attacked in, but I just really felt strongly that little Teferi needed to leave the battlefield for our game plan to keep moving forward. So gonna slam a High Noon replacement right now. Let's see if the opponent has something. Okay, so they do. Alright, so they're shocking in a Watery Grave. We finally prompted a response. Okay, so here's a Mana Drain. So counter spells are like, you have to be careful about what you grab with Spell Queller, but counter spells like among the safest things you can grab because they're so restrained as far as their timing. And holding the Witch Enchanter, because we know they're going to probably play the Assimilation Aegis right now, and so that's why I did not play it as a land. So they grab the Subtlety, and alright, so they're going to go ahead and pop the Spell Queller and get a no value Mana Drain right there. And like I said, that's why I was so eager to grab that Mana Drain right there, is because I knew they wouldn't be able to likely get value. Now there are situations they can set up where they can get value out of it, like if they swords your Spell Queller with the counter spell at the right time, like they can whammy you, but generally it's pretty safe. So going to Witch Enchanter right here. Thankfully they don't have like a Stern Scalding or something, that would have been devastating, but we're going to blow up their equipment and get back our Subtlety. And feel pretty good about that exchange. Alright, so opponent's going to crack their fetch. Let's see what happens. See if they have any more Surveil lands. No, Mystic Sanctuary is going to grab Drown on the Lock. And our graveyard's pretty loaded, so they can kill whatever they want, or counter basically anything in our whole deck. So, alright, so they're killing Subtlety while the going's good, passing to us. Now they might have another equipment in hand that they could just dump into play off Stoneforge, so you have to remember that. Now I'm about to slam Teferi Time Raveler, but then realize like, oh man, I won't have enough blue sources to hold up Mana Drain. And so you could, that's why I hesitate, like, oh dang it, like just from how to end up fetching, only have 2 blue sources. So we could do Mana Drain or Teferi Time Raveler. So trying to figure out what the best course of action is. Attacking with Witch Enchanter, just they don't have any good blocks at Stoneforge. Now that could have gone poorly with the equipment being dropped into play. So there is do have to acknowledge that. Decides better to hold up Mana Drain, and the opponent fires off a Thoughtseize, and that seems like, and the thing is with High Noon, that's their one spell this turn. So it seems very worth it to Mana Drain that just to protect our hand. Well, the mana generation won't really help that much. And now we finally draw our extra blue source if we need it. So we're going to play the Scalding Tarn and play Teferi Time Raveler. Let's see what the opponent does. Okay, so they have a Mana Drain for it. And so they seem to be a mid-range deck that's like very much geared to be able to grind out games like Mana Drains, Thoughtseizes. Like they're not aiming for very fast kills in their deck. Fortunately for us, I think we're pretty, I mean obviously we're in like a pretty good position right now, but I think it's a pretty favorable matchup we have, because if we ever like Chalice for 1, then they're like, we're locking out some of their spells. High Noon and Teferi Time Raveler are very bad for them. This is some of the upside of High Noon right here. So they have a Snapcaster, but that's their one spell for the turn. So like they have the ability to flashback Drown on the Lock, but they can't because they've already cast their spell. So this is the advantage, you know, against Snapcaster decks. Obviously High Noon is just devastatingly strong. So going to Scalding Tarn, grab a Meticulous Archive. We don't even have enough islands for Mystic Sanctuary yet, so. Now at this point, keeping the High Noon because we're at the Burn 'em Out plan, so we can't really attack in with Witch Familiar, but we can eventually start cracking High Noon. So I decide, so we're 1 mana short of playing one and cracking one, but decide with 1 card in hand, it's unlikely to have another counter right now, so I'm just going to try and sneak the second one in and just lock up basically our 10 points of burn like on the board. So let's see what the opponent does have something. All right, so it's another Snapcaster. So our game plan is just completely shutting down what they're trying to do. Like these High Noons are like very potent, and they can't really attack in because they're scared of, like, our Witch Enchanter will get to attack in. So opponent draws a land and just is going to pass to us. Thinking about the attacks that they pass to us. Now we're way past needing Teferi Time Raveler. We're on the Burn 'em Out plan, so we just gotta make sure, basically, that they don't have like any stifle effects. So opponent cracks the fetch. And as we're sort of grinding out this game, let me know, like, what are your favorite tools for your control deck of choice? And it could be any format. Like, what kind of spells just make you very happy to see in your hand when you play control? Now, opponent's going to Mystic Sanctuary the removal spell / counter spell, but the writing's on the wall right here. We can dome them for 5 on their end step, untap, 5 them again. So here's the Bowmasters, and yeah, they're just showing us what they have. So, and a very well fought game against a Esper midrange. So we move on to the next one. All right. It's slow, but it has a lot of good cards. And then we see a turn 0 Leyline of Sanctity. So, I mean, I guess we do have ways to get, and the opponent surveils and attracts it off their land. So that is extremely bad because it means we're playing Reanimator, and like without even trying, they have a Reanimator target already. So we're just hoping that it's not like the turn 2 Atraxa right here. One's gonna crack their fetch. Alright, so they're not playing anything, so we're safe for now. No Faithless Looting, no Reanimate. Would love to, like, surveil a Chalice right now to the top and lock out any Reanimates. Teferi is reasonable, but doesn't seem like what we need right here. So I'm going to surveil that away. Like I said, Chalice draw right now would be super strong. Alright, so it's not a Chalice. Going to play other fetch land to grab a surveil land. Okay, so let's see what the opponent has in store for us. Alright, so they're gonna crack their fetch. Alright. They shotgun their land, Dark Ritual. Okay, here we go. We have Solitude, so we're not feeling that bad. That we are feeling bad about. So they ritual out a Soaring, and they're gonna dump a vampire into the battlefield. And it's a Vein Ripper, which is honestly, like, really strong against us. So I'm trying to figure out, so I'm gonna get a Meticulous Archive to try and figure out what to do. And I think I should keep the Solitude on top because, so Vein Ripper has Ward, sacrifice a creature, but Solitude, even if you pitch cast it, you can sacrifice it before it, evokes itself away. So decided just to hold on and play Teferi Time Raveler, but I think it might have been better just to pitch cast the Solitude, right then, now or then, and sacrifice it to the Vein Ripper. So it's going to attack into Teferi. And my problem was I didn't really think about the Solitude Vein Ripper interaction. Like, I was just thinking Ward was going to get it, but it was later on where I'm like, oh shoot, I think that would have worked. So we're going to play the Supreme Verdict to take down Vein Ripper. Part of me also wanted to, like, so I think another reason I didn't pitch cast Solitude is that I'm worried about their Soaring being in play, and I really wanted to get a threat to attack it. So Reanimate's going to hit Atraxis, so we got to see how bad this is for us. They're going to draw some number of cards off it. So they get an Olivia, a Reanimate, and a land. All of which are very bad because they can nearly hardcast Olivia, and we already know they have a Vein Ripper in the graveyard for Reanimate. So, regretting not having gotten rid of the Vein Ripper with exile removal earlier. So, checking what we have in the graveyard, because we have a Mystic Sanctuary, and decide to put it on top. And so I'm really agonized because the opponent has a lot of ways to attack us. Obviously there's Atraxa in play, there's Vein Ripper in the graveyard, and there's Olivia, all of which are problematic for us. And they have a lot of different things they can do. And Olivia has haste and can just basically reanimate Vein Ripper for good. And I think this is a critical mistake I make right here. It's very mana efficient, that's why it's like so tempting, like, oh yeah, I can Solitude the Atraxa and then have something to attack Soaring. Hoping they don't have a land. Alright, so opponent just gonna reanimate Vein Ripper. Now the reason that is so devastating is because Olivia is such a huge problem for us that we need to be able to answer it at instant speed, and Solitude is the only way. So I think what I should have done that turn is Wrath, Supreme Verdict away the Atraxa and keep up pitch casting Solitude. That way, if they try and Olivia, we can Solitude pitch cast, get rid of it before it attacks, and then we'd be doing decent. We can Supreme Verdict away the Vein Ripper again later, at that point in the game. So, but by casting Solitude on the Atraxa, I took away like our best way to deal with Olivia, because right now Soaring can dump Olivia into play. We can't even like guaranteed mana drain it. So, I think that's where I went so wrong. Not only that, it would have been probably useful to have a second Solitude that like I surveilled away earlier. So, some unfortunate plans for me at the moment. But we're gonna play a Teferi and decide just to draw, because we're feeling pretty good. Like, we could hold up mana drain at this point and knocked enough loyalty off Soaring that it can't dump Olivia into play quite yet. But we're putting ourselves in a very precarious spot with like just a massive Vein Ripper being able to like either go after our life total or Teferi. This seems pretty bad. So a Demonic Tutor on the stack from the opponent. They probably have all sorts of nasty haymakers they could grab, or honestly the best thing they could probably grab is like a Thoughtseize. So I decide just to drain the Demonic Tutor, and Teferi bites the dust.
Really should have seen that coming.
But the opponent is playing this really well. They're just camping. They're not getting overly aggressive with Olivia. They're only just waiting till it's like necessary. And not to mention like the one Vein Ripper they have is in play anyway. So they're just being extremely patient. So we do finally kill Soaring.
This is not my final demise.
And now you can see the dilemma, because even if we Supreme Verdict right now, they just hard cast Olivia, bring back Vein Ripper, and we're just insta dead. So I don't cast anything here because we can hold up High Noon. I was hoping they just like cast Olivia, we could blast it with High Noon, but the opponent once again has been playing this very well. And solituding the wrong creature back there has just been really tough. So that's sort of just a desperation play, like playing the Spell Queller. And at first I was thinking of like wrathing, but then I'm like, anyway, that should have probably just been a Solitude attack to get in life. Hold back Spell Queller to chump the Vein Ripper. So that was just like a bad play on my part. Alright, let's see what the opponent does. And another Soaring. Now, so I'm like, oh, they didn't give it lifelink before the attack. Well, that's because Soaring has another mode. It can basically toss a vampire. So when they went to combat, I could have blasted the Soaring with the High Noon. Did not, and we ended up dying. So that was a tough one. I think were it not for my misplays, that one is like really winnable. But we're gonna mulligan to a hand with a little bit more early action, and seeing Reprieve and Mana Drain makes you feel pretty good. Another Solitude is also great, so plenty of cards to pitch to it if we need to. Now, seeing double mountains is already putting Blood Moon on my radar. That being said, it's not in play yet, and so I decided to stay greedy and grab a Surveil land. But you could see me thinking about it here, like, do I need to grab the island here? Like, no, let's just grab the Surveil land. Like, we're still safe for the moment. Solitude number 3 doesn't seem, at least it's not guaranteed to be used. We don't know enough about what they're doing yet, so. But we have a pretty great hand right now, though. So, I'm gonna play the fetch land and pass. So, bracing for impact for Blood Moon. But we have ways to like stall it at the very least, or just deal with it outright with Mana Drain. So, opponent puts a One Ring on the stack. Definitely don't want that in play. That's a way they can sort of battle through our counter spells. Now, with our like strongest locks, the One Ring won't really matter if we like have like High Noon and Chalice out. Decide I want to really hit some land drops, so I'm going to use Reprieve there, and we can't really like super well use the Mana Drain mana, so going to just Reprieve the One Ring, play the land, and pass. We need more lands though, so alright, so opponent's just going to run it back. I'm deciding, alright, do I Mana Drain it, or do I Reprieve and try and find a land? And there's also the Spell Queller option, but that seems really risky against red, especially with the Mountain Oak. Like, if they just bolt that after, like, that's just not good. So, we did find a land. It is tapped, though, and it seems like another Mana Drain is going to be very useful as we make them just keep juggling the One Ring right now. So, let's see if they try the One Ring again, or if they change plans. The opponent is getting pretty frustrated, I bet, trying to resolve the One Ring. Sneak attack. Okay. That one seems pretty dangerous. It also seems like a great Mana Drain moment because with the extra colorless mana, we can just like hard cast a Solitude on our turn and hold up the Mana Drain, which we know we're drawing. So it didn't crack the land because we already knew it was on top. We don't want to shuffle our Mana Drain. So going to hard cast a Solitude to get a threat and a lifelinker in play. And like we're feeling pretty safe. We got Subtlety and Solitude and Mana Drain. And the opponent must be getting a little desperate, cracking the Mind Stone, trying to find something to get themselves out of like our lock that we're assembling. So they're gonna put the One Ring on the stack again. And so far, I feel pretty good. We've only let them resolve one spell this game. So, and we have Mystic Sanctuary. Deciding between Mana Drain and Reprieve. And end up putting, like just being able to counter something permanently, end up deciding on Mana Drain. So, but put a Mana Drain on top, Mana Drain the One Ring. Can't feel good to be in the opponent's position right now, knowing that we're untapping with at least Mana Drain. So, with that extra mana, I'm going to put a Subtlety into play. Doesn't seem like it's going to be like tucking any creatures and like just trying to get enough threats into play that we can close this game out. So there was, you could have played Solitude also, but considering they're trying to sneak, yeah, and the opponent packs it in. So on to the next game. This hand looks pretty strong, except didn't have like any lock pieces. Like, I don't know. Now that I look at it, maybe that should have been a keep with so many Reprieves and Mana Drains. Oh, you know that? Okay, that's why I didn't keep it. Is it only had one blue source? Okay, that's what it was. But maybe the Reprieves could have got us there, like with the card draw, to eventually make room for the Mana Drain. So that might have been a bad mulligan. Turn one Nethergoyf doesn't feel great. Gonna play our fetch land. Now, it does feel great that we have Chalice in hand. Like, it's obviously going to be strong against the Lurrus deck. So, opponent crashes in for 1 damage and passes. That's tough. I mean, the opponent has 2 mana open. Like, they run Mana Drain often in these kind of decks. So, not hopeful of resolving a spell right now. So now I'm desperate for lands, and I would rather not play a tap land on turn 3, but it's a guaranteed land, so I decided to keep it. And really hoping that we can resolve this Chalice, because once, you know, if we bounce the Teferi bounced another Goyf, the opponent has the spell snare. So that ended up pretty poorly for us, but you know, that spell snare was going to get us one way or the other. The opponent shocks in the land and bolts us. All of a sudden we fall to 13. Mishra's Bauble is going to grow the Nether Goyf even more. So the opponent is like putting us on quite the clock right here. And you wouldn't think like their deck could deal out that kind of damage, but we're starting our turn 3 at 10 life. And we draw another Chalice. So we can do the same. If we can actually resolve this, Teferi next turn is going to make our life pretty nice. Assuming it resolves, you know, because once again, they can be packing mana drains and stuff. So I'm very happy to see it resolve. And this is, I think I get a little too confident right here. Like, oh, we've got a lot of good stuff. Like, yeah, we can keep this. What I should have done is planned for this scenario where the opponent has a Bowmasters. I think surveilling that away to try and get a land would have been just a lot safer, because now we fall to 4 life and we've guaranteed ourselves that we cannot Supreme Verdict. So that was just like a bad play on my part. I think just surveilling away the Subtlety, like just trying to find lands, keep that going. And yeah, the opponent has the mana drain, which would not have mattered against Supreme Verdict. And yeah, we weren't guaranteed to rip a land there, but had we ripped it, I think it would have been an easy game to win from that point on. So, especially considering Chalice was already in play. So that was real tough, but we shake it off and move on to the next game. Gigantic Companion on their side, turn 1 Thoughtseize. Can't do anything about it, so what they take will inform a lot about what they think is good against their deck. So they take Little Teferi. So I have to remember that as far as what spells we play. So it could be Energy, but we'll have to see what else the opponent does. Our opponent passes it. Potentially 2 mana to use. Gonna grab a Meticulous Archive and see what we can find. Yeah, another land is, even though it's a utility land, like that's just not useful right now. Alright, Supreme Verdict. Feels pretty good to have that sort of safety valve. And just gonna play High Noon right now and just see what happens. Now the nice thing is High Noon also works nice with Spell Queller in certain situations. Like, alright, so the opponent's gonna Bowmasters in response to High Noon. But let's say we have a High Noon out and the opponent bolts a Spell Queller. Well, they can't cast the spell underneath Spell Queller because of High Noon. So they work nicely together in that aspect, and also gating the opponent down to like 1 spell a turn that Spell Quellers can potentially snatch up. Alright, so we're playing against Jund, clearly, and I actually played Jund a couple of times. I'll link a video right now. So we're just waiting to Supreme Verdict and really hoping we don't get Thoughtseized right here. So the opponent has like a little bit of a clock on us, but we're just going to stay patient. Try not to use any of our spells right now. Alright, so the opponent's going to pass to us. And going to just shock in the Hallowed Fountain. Like, it is scary going down to 7, but we have to play it somehow. So we're going to Supreme Verdict. Take down all their stuff, hoping that it's not like another Bowmasters getting flashed in, but no, the opponent just passes to us. They're going to dash a Ragavan out. Now, I think quite a long time ago, you're like, alright, so we can, like, Solitude, we can pitch cast it, but it seems much better. Our cards are probably useful for them. You can see they ripped a High Noon off the top of our deck, so we can very soon hard cast Solitude, which should be very good against them. Now, remember, High Noon's only allowing them to play 1 spell per turn. Alright, so opponent plays cracks a fetch. Alright, so they're surveilling. So I'm hoping they just try and Ragavan us again. because that's like not very useful right now. So we could Spell Queller, but it seems very useful to get a lifelinker in play. Now this is a... I grabbed the island because I'm at such low life, but we also do not have a red source for High Noon right now. And so, I don't know, it felt a little risky to go down lower, because like if we go down to 2 and like we untap, they bolt us, like, I mean, I guess we had Spell Queller, so yeah, maybe locking up the red source was what you're supposed to do right there, because you know, having High Noon online is just really important. But feeling decent about our life total. I'm thinking about Mystic Sanctuary here, whether we want the Wrath. But we're starting to like turn the corner against them though, so I'm not sure whether we even need it or not. And decide, like, with double Spell Queller and sink into Stupor, like, there's not really anything they can do to like stop us, unless there's some crazy uncounterable thing, you know. But yeah, so the opponent passes. Probably has something instant speed. Alright, so they have an Assassin's Trophy. They're trying to make us, like, interact on our turn. But we have, like, an excellent answer in Spell Queller. So we're just going to grab the Assassin's Trophy. That was their one spell for this turn. And we're sitting pretty with either Spell Queller or sink into Stupor right now. So the opponent puts Minsk and Boo in the stack. And I snap out the wrong spell. I should have Spell Queller because then we have lethal out. You know, obviously we're not in a bad spot after that, but that was just a misplay. Yeah, the opponent's dead anyway. Well, that was super fun. And you know me, I love prison decks. Like, I'm always trying to find more ways to lock people up, and I have tons of Chalice of the Void decks. I'll link another one right here in case you're interested. But yeah, there's a lot to love about this deck. And honestly, like, it won a whole lot and probably should have won more if it weren't for my misplays. So like, I think it's a really well-positioned deck, and I'm pretty dang happy with the 60 right now. Just wanted to go over some cards I'm thinking of. If you want to go more prison-y, there's Meddling Mage, but the fact it's not an instant speed threat is a little tough. No More Lies is worth considering because it pitches to both Solitude and Subtlety, but I really like the Reprieves, I think, instead of this. Psychic Frog's potent, maybe, you know, worth a shot. Brazen Borrower can do some nice things, but I like the ones, I think, like the Pitch Elementals and Spell Queller are a little more potent. One thing I was wondering is if we need a little more card draw / selection in this deck. Like, we do sort of get there off like Teferi, Time Raveler minuses, and Reprieves, but maybe like Memory Deluge or Dig Through Time, like a couple of those would be nice. So hard to say. Another thing is Planeswalkers are particularly tough for this deck to deal with. Like, you know, we can like attack them down, but you could see they're giving us troubles at times. So maybe it's worth a couple Leyline bindings. Not certain about that, but it is another like flash way to like leverage the High Noon, you know, basically to break the symmetry in High Noon is what I should say. And another one I was thinking about is Vendilion Clique, because once you got them sort of locked up, it could be a good way to keep them locked up and also be like a really nice clock. The tricky thing though is if you have like a High Noon in play, you Vendilion Clique them on their draw step, and like let's say they draw into something awesome, well, you can't counter anything after that point. So that is like the tough thing, but anyway, this deck is pretty awesome. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to see even more nonsense, please consider subscribing. And if you're already subscribed, thank you for your support. Your engagement with the channel helps me know what the people want. Thank you.